Unmute.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's great to be back here at PakLaunch, and courtesy of our friends in the Silicon Valley, we are getting to discover or find out a lot about something which is instrumental for the future of Pakistan, which is skills development and what the government is doing. I've worked in the not-for-profit sector, and I can tell you that NGOs, private initiatives can do only that much. I think ultimately the government has to transform change because it has got the scale that no NGO, no vocational training institutes can achieve. Just to give you an example, some of the vocational training institute and Javed bhai also, who's going to join us, we used to run, had students of 2,000, maximum 3,000 students graduating a year, whereas some of the government TEFTAs have 200,000 students going through them in a year. So the scale is totally different. So the role of government cannot be avoided. We may do great work, but we have to ultimately influence that. And courtesy of PakLaunch, we are going to discover, or we're going to talk about something called the Hunarmand Pakistan program, the first of the kind program in Pakistan. And we have the chairman of NAVTTC, which is the ultimate regulatory body governing skills development in Pakistan. So all vocational training institutes have to register with them, and they are the ultimate arbiter of quality and quantity, both of vocational training in Pakistan, working through that institutes. Okay, so I was being advised to use of my head of microphone. I don't have a headphone, so if you can just bear with me. So with that, I'll first going to share some of my own experiences from vocational training and skills development, and then we're going to go into Javed bhai's experience and also the Hunarmand program. I would like to just set the context of it, because we as techies all look for skilled workforce in Pakistan. What are the challenges and what are the opportunities of that in Pakistan? So if you can see the screen, exponential impact, industry development, youth employment can only happen through skills development. We saw recently Tim Cook say that we don't go to China for cheap labor. We go to China because of the quantity of skilled labor. You know, you can fill machine tooling. He said we can fill like literally stadiums, multiple stadiums of it in China, versus he said in the US only one stadium. So skill development, quality skills at scale is of critical quality. This is some of my experience that has driven me towards feeling that this is something which is very, very important. Vocational training institutes, which I used to run, we graduated about 12,000 students. In a year, we have maximum graduated 2,853 students. We initially we started off with a very low placement rate of 50%, but we eventually went up to 73%, and now that's something that a lot of institutes are aiming at. We have placed 209 students internationally. I will tell you that some of the students that we placed who did not settle abroad, they came back after a short while, and I'll share with you some of the reasons why that had happened and how Hunarmand program is going to change that or is addressing that. So this is a bit of my experience, and I can tell you this also is a very important slide, because it tells you that, you know, we are a very young country. We have 22 is the median age in Pakistan, and we need jobs at scale. So a lot of people go into further education. University can only cater to at the most 800,000 students in a year. We need many more. We have much more youth coming into the market. Some say about 3 million youth coming into the employment market. So building nice liberal arts colleges, whilst it serves a purpose, is not the solution for Pakistan. We need a vocational training solution and things that we can be skilled and people can be skilled quickly and at cheap cost, a solution at scale, quality and quality at scale. And as you've seen, a lot of the US tech companies have removed the requirement of undergraduate degree for working with them. And this tells you that if you don't get into higher education, you have the informal sector, unskilled labor, but very soon you fall down into petty crime, organized crime, and violent extremism. As all Pakistanis, we are always cringing every time something happens like that. And the primary reason for that is economics and unemployment amongst the youth. And I think that's why skills and vocational training is such an important role, in Pakistan. I mentioned why some of the reason why our kids who used to go abroad were not able to adjust there and came back. There were a couple of reasons. I would say 20% of the time, the skills they had was not up to what was expected in the international market. But 80% of the time, it was lack of soft skills, ability to engage with people from different communities. So whether it's in Dubai, you're Filipino or Indians or Bangladeshis or others, ability to do that. So what we started was a very extensive soft skills training. And I believe soft skills training is as critical as technical skills training. We used to spend at least 30% of 6 months course in soft skills training. A lot of it was about the English, spoken English, confidence, presentation skills, building those in the students because they have a sense of confidence in them. Basic computer literacy, Word, sending emails, and basic etiquettes and hygiene, including eating with a fork and knife, because they would get very frustrated when we go into an environment like that, and they would know how to use those utensils, and that was one of the reasons added to their stress, and they would give up and they would come back. So all of those things, soft skills, all around the world are being emphasized a lot. And in Pakistan, through our experience, we realized soft skills are very, very important. They complement technical skills, particularly for students in the low-income market. This is some of the challenges that exist in the market. If you run a vocational training institute or program, you will realize that your recruitment is a problem. Now with digital programs, it's less. Because you got reach across the country. I think COVID-19, if anything positive has done that, is that students have gone online and you can have access them anywhere. But generally, brick and mortar solutions is a big issue. And part of the reason is skills development, unlike in Germany or Finland, is second as a second or third tier career, and there is not much of respect for it. And so what we need is, country-wide glamorification campaign. I remember a campaign by Skills India, a very interesting advertisement they had with Tendulkar, with a carpenter. So the carpenter is making his chair, and Tendulkar walks in, and this carpenter is like a kid. He's very mesmerized by him, by having Tendulkar there. And he said, you're an artist, you're a karigar, and the kid says that you're the boss, you're the real karigar. He said, you know what, I do magic with wood, with my balla, and you also do magic with wood, which is making my chair. So we are both very similar to each other. So just highlighting the importance of working with hand, working with developing skills, it's very important for raising the profile of the TVET structure, TVET sector in Pakistan. The most important element is that if we have more students coming in, better quality students coming in, of course we'll have better quality graduates as a result of having more respect for recruitment. Then retention, of course, because one of the things that happens is these kids come from very poor families. They have what I call exogenous shocks, health, emergency, employment related, and they drop off. So long-term programs, year programs, I can tell you a year worth of program would have 3 to 4% per month dropout rate. So if you take 100 people, only 48 to 55 to 48 would graduate. Like, it's a huge loss of efficiency and money as a result of that. So when we cut it down to 6 months, we were graduating 82% of the people who were coming in. So that was much, much better. Then the curriculum. You know, I went to City of Austin Community Center. There are like hundreds of training programs at the community colleges, City of Austin Community Colleges. And there was a strong connection between the industry and the community college. The industry would place their machinery, old machinery there. They would train their students. They would send their instructors there. They would run the training program. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, the industry-academia linkage is broken. Industry goes another direction, academia goes another direction, and to match the two together, you need to create advisory boards, review of curriculum, and all of those things. The Skills Council, we've done that. The most attempt has happened is through some of the donors and some of the public agencies in different cities, different provinces have worked on that. But those are the reasons why TVET hasn't scaled. TVET is not seen as a solution. It's because of low respect. It's about because the industry academia break, which means basically the students, what the skills they get are not employable skills. And if they're not employable, they don't get enough salary. If they don't get enough salary, they're not motivated to come and into skills development. So this is a circular problem. I always say it is both a demand and it's a supply level problem. On the demand side, the industry doesn't pay at that level that much to make it attractive for people to learn skills, and then that in itself creates a supply issue. You don't get enough supply, and the paid placements are missing. This is based on data that we ran, conducted of 227 alumni of the Vocational Training Institute that I used to run, the Amantech, of the different programs that we ran, and all it shows is tracking of students who graduated over a 2 to 3 year period. And lo and behold, what is fascinating, and I think it gives us confidence, is that students who just get jobs, they have a very, very kind of slow inclining salary curve. So they go up from 12,508, and I'm talking about, this 5-year actually survey, and to about 18,870 over that period. Whereas just look at the people who go into entrepreneurship. They are self-employed mechanics, Tirhan, or people who set up their small shops with mobile phone shops, fixing shops. And look at that escalation, 34,300 in your first year versus 12,508. And look at the gradient of that, which is 558,900. So literally there's a 3.5x variation between what is a job and what is an entrepreneurship career. And plus the person who's creating entrepreneur, who's an entrepreneur, is also creating multiple jobs. So, focus on entrepreneurship or skills that can lead into entrepreneurship is very critical. The second line is about what you call OJTs, on-job trainings. They are also referred to as apprenticeships. So these apprenticeships are valuable because if you have apprenticeships and then you get a job, then of course you get paid more. You have a differential of about 3,000, 4,000 rupees as compared to normal jobs. So what this tells us, first the problem, but also the solution. And the solution is that you need to have apprenticeships, which Hunarmand Pakistan is working towards, and you need to focus on entrepreneurship, which through the tech labs and a lot of other programs, the Hunarmand Pakistan is also working towards. And that is the solution. The solution, Pakistan, if we get stuck in the 18,000 rupee level, we will have incremental change. Yeah? So we will do better, but not by much. If you have to have exponential change, and I know Silicon Valley is all about exponential change, we have to go from this curve to the top curve and go into entrepreneurship at all levels. And that includes the NICs, which are very glamorous, which every one of you, most of you have heard about, but it also talks about entrepreneurship at the basic level, which Hunarmand Pakistan, the Aam Aadmi of Pakistan, they are focused toward. So this is a little bit about my background and my experience. I thought that was to set the context and explain to you how, what are the lay of the land, what are the challenges there, and what are the possible solutions that exist. With that, I would go to my main attraction for the evening, Mr. Javed Hassan. Javed bhai, if you can go on to so the main draw of the evening is Javed bhai, Mr. Javed Hassan, who has a very interesting background. He has a background which is quite similar to most of us, including yourselves, others who are in Silicon Valley, and somehow he's ended up in public service in Pakistan, making huge impact to NAVTTC. So I think before we go into the Hunarmand program, because all of us aspire to public service, I'd like to ask Mr. Javed Hassan about his own personal journey from being an investment banker, first for Imperial College, but being an investment banker now running such a complicated large-scale program in Pakistan. Over to you, Javed.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. Very kind of you to introduce me. First and foremost, talking about public service, I'd like to congratulate all Americans on the election of the 46th president and the first woman president, vice president from the subcontinent. I think we should all take pride in that, even though she might be of Indian origin. But the world is full of possibilities, and this is a good day as far as I'm concerned. Now, talking about myself, I'm very much part of the Pakistani diaspora. I grew up in Africa, and my parents were working there as civil servants, and then went to England to Imperial College to do civil engineering, worked as a civil engineer, then went on to do an MBA at London Business School. After business school, went into investment banking and was in investment banking for a good 25 years. And this was both in London, Hong Kong, Singapore, and in different areas of investment banking. I had the pleasure of working in Southeast Asia and extensively in China in a period where China grew dramatically, which was in the late 90s and from 2000 to sort of 2010. And I was involved with various IPOs, so had a good chance to see what was happening in China, which kind of has helped me form some of my thoughts about Pakistan. I came back to Pakistan in around 2007 and was working in the private sector here in insurance and banking. But in 2012, decided that there's enough of that. I've worked in the financial sector and decided I should do something actually useful in life, and went into the charity sector, non-profit sector, which was, and what I felt was there's a particular area which is not glamorous, but I felt it needed a lot of focus and energy, and it was really the age group between sort of 15 to 25. Everyone gives a lot of charity and funding for kids who are sort of 3 to 12. There's also a lot of interest from the government in the 20 to 30 in terms of degrees and PhDs. But that group of 15 to sort of 25, especially those who don't go to universities, there seems to be an area that doesn't seem to attract a lot of interest in places like Pakistan. And I felt that was a much neglected area and not sufficient amount being done there. I therefore first joined as a CEO of Hunar Foundation, which some of you might have heard of. And that was a private sector non-profit organization, which where we set up a number of institutes to train in traditional skills like, you know, plumbing, welding, electrician, carpentry, masonry, very much the typical traditional skills. The total capacity, by the time I left, was around about 2,500, and it was going up to 3,500. I think now it's about 5,000. I left in about around 2017. I came to Islamabad. I was in Karachi. I came to Islamabad, and for various reasons, I was helping the PTI election cell and was involved in the election of our Prime Minister. And once the election was done and he had won, I thought that was the end of it. And I went back into my sort of semi-retirement life and was thinking what to do next, until I got a call from the Minister of Education to look at vocational training, because he had set up about 4 task forces, 4 areas for forming his policy, the ministry's policies towards education and vocational training. I was the convener of the task force, and we set about in 2 months to bring about a policy for what is needed to be done in vocational training in Pakistan, vocational and skills training in Pakistan. Now, we basically assembled a lot of people from industry, from the government, what is known as TEFTAs in Pakistan. These are the Technical Education Vocational Training associations across the various provinces. I've known Ahmad for quite some time, because we were sort of colleagues and competitors, because while Ahmad was in Amantech CEO, I was in Hunar Foundation, and we knew each other well. So Ahmad was part of this task force, and we basically put together a policy and looking at various issues that challenge Pakistan in terms of skills training. One of the things you will, I'm not going into the details of those skills training, because really we'll cover it as I discuss the Hunarmand Pakistan program. I'm very aware of the time. I'll try and wrap my presentation in about maximum 15 minutes more, but because I think I'd like to have it as an interactive session rather than me going on. The minister thought, given that I was involved in or chairing the task force, he asked me to become the chairman of NAVTTC, which is National Vocational Technical Training Commission, which is the apex body for skills training in Pakistan. It has a number of things under its mandate. One of them is to regulate the skills training area, provide certification, ensure that the certification meets international standards, ensure also that the training is up to date, the curriculum that is there available is in line with industry needs. We also are involved in accrediting the institutions in the country to see if they are up to standard, and also the ambition is to bring them up to international standards. On a special basis, we can set up institutes, whether in the Federal Capital Territory or in the provinces, and we also have the mandate to fund, not necessarily train ourselves, but fund training across the country wherever we feel there is a need for, or the federal government feels there is a need for. So that's the mandate. It's quite an overarching mandate, which allows us to do a lot depending on what the priorities of the government are and obviously what the needs are. I took over in January 2018 as chairman NAVTTC, and we put together a program for which we wanted funding, which was obviously not going to be in that year. It's in the current, it had to be in the fiscal year for 1920, which in the June budget in 2019. And one of the things I realized is you can have a great plan and you can have the buy-in of the Prime Minister, and you can have the buy-in of the planning minister, you can have the buy-in of various stakeholders, the provinces, but getting it through the process, so to speak. I don't want to in any way suggest that the bureaucracy doesn't help, but getting it through the process was something else. So between getting it approved and finally included in the budget was remarkably interesting process, I would say. It was to a point where on a day when the Prime Minister was announcing the program in Convention Center, and with great deal of fanfare, and we were standing there and congratulating ourselves about this program, which is a 10 billion rupee program. At the same time, my executive director was being told that the planning commission, certain senior person, they are not the minister, was basically rejecting the program. And so you have those sort of things happening when you're working with the government. But I'm glad to say that we managed to sort that out, and it got included in the budget, and it was included in the 2019-20 budget, and we started implementing it. Ahmad, if I can request you, if you can put the Hunarmand screen, because I can't seem to do it on my computer. If you can share. Hello. I can't hear you.
Before I do that, I'm going to add that. I have added Javed Hassan's contact details on the group chat. So his email address. Also, I think you'd benefit from following him on Twitter, where he engages in quite a few Twitter battles with quite a famous people. And I think it's never a dull moment of him. He realizes the joke that I'm talking about. But I've shared his, and of course NAVTTC's Twitter account to follow the updates and follow what they're doing, plus the email address. Part of this event is for all of us, or all of you, to connect with NAVTTC and how your programs can integrate into this and make it more efficient and better. Most times we try to avoid the government, as Javed Bhai said, because the government has its own inertia. It's very difficult, but only through government one can get scale and transformation change. So one must engage with the government, as Javed Bhai has been doing. And so I'll, with that, I will start sharing. One second. Okay. So I will, yeah. So just tell me, Javed, where do you want to go? And
I can't see anything, Ahmad. I can't see the slides. Yeah. Okay.
Can you see it?
I don't know why, but I can't seem to see it. Can you?
Ahmad, your system seems to be quite slow. Please unshare and share again.
अच्छा एक सेकंड मैं अपना स्टॉप वीडियो करता हूँ. Stop share. Yeah, I think it's a pay. Let me just. Let me. Actually my PowerPoint crashed. Just one second. Let me.
I can imagine in the States you're all very excited about the new president.
Yeah, hopefully the transition comes out to be smooth.
Inshallah.
So, inshallah.
Okay, I think let's try it again. Share. Is it working?
Yeah, it's there now.
Yes,
okay.
We can see that.
Okay. Does it work?
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, that's great. Just a second. What I'll do is, because I'll open it myself so that I can tell you which page to go to, and just a second. Just a second. I'll be with you. Okay. Thank you very much. I just wanted to add that in formulating this program, we had a lot of help from the board, where Ahmad is a colleague. We have 12 non-private sector members as directors on the board and of NAVTTC, and Ahmad plays a very important part given his experience. So this program had a lot of input from Ahmad, and I really want to acknowledge that and thank him for all his support in doing so. Now, just to give you I'm not going to go through every slide, but there are basically 14 key interventions area. The program goals, that's the next slide, Ahmad.
Just one.
No.
Just one second.
Can we send it to someone else or to the host?
Yeah,
that might be easier because otherwise this will be difficult. But let me just carry on without the slide, and you know, it would be helpful, but I'll try and do it without the slide because it.
You got it now? Have you got it now?
The next slide.
Yeah.
Page 3. Can we go down to page 3? Yeah. Page 2, then page 3. Okay. Yeah. Basically, the program. This is page 2, page 3. If you can stay on page 3, please. Page 3. The next page, please. Next page.
Oh.
Ahmed?
Yeah, sorry. Are you...
Next page, please.
Just one second. Just let me share the screen to... Did you get it now?
Yeah, okay, fine. I think this is, I think it's not easy to work with this. So let me just explain just without, and this will just live with this slide. Now, basically in Pakistan, we have about 2.5 million youth coming into the work, 2.1 to 2.5 million young people turning 16 every year. They basically, of these, about 700,000 go into the, effectively 700,000 go into the university stream, which is FSC, FA, medical, whatever. So it's about 700,000. So of the 2.5 million, we are left with about 1.8 million. Now, of these 1.8 million, another 500,000 or so basically drop out from the system, get married, what have you, and we really have another about 1.3 million. For these 1.3 million, basically, we should have some kind of non-university academic training that should be available. In reality, we only have capacity for about 400,000. Now, that's the starting point. Now, the capacity itself is of poor quality. There are about 3,807 vocational training institutes in the country. Many of them are of dubious quality, and the standard of training is very poor. The courses are extremely old-fashioned. So they have numerous issues with these institutes. There is little or no integration with the industry for most of these institutes, and the young people who are being trained are not necessarily in tune with what industry needs. We have conducted, NAVTTC has conducted various surveys, and basically in those surveys, we find that every year for skilled labor, and these are very often sort of very basic skills, machinists, carpenters, factory workers, electricians, we need about 1.1 to 1.2 million every year. And stitchers in textile industry. And in reality, we are not even supplying 150,000 of such skilled people. So there's a huge, you have a huge gap, a mismatch between what industry requires, what we can produce, and what training we're giving. So essentially what we need to do is a major overhaul in the vocational training area. First, we need to ensure that the skills that are being provided are in tune with what industry needs. We also then have to increase capacity. We have to provide the training of a standard that they are easily absorbable and productive in the industry. And the other thing we need to do is that, given that industry and technology is changing all the time, we need to make sure that it is relevant to the modern times. So this was the real driving force behind these 14 components. The first component was, in terms of standardizing the qualification. That's component number one. There's 200 TVET qualifications that we are standardizing and making sure. But this is 200 under this program. There's another program which we are standardizing, another 300. So there'll be something like 500 TVET qualifications. These qualifications really made sure that they are in tune with what industry requires. Industry players are involved in the design of these curriculum. We are also trying to make sure that it's aligned with what's happening in best practice internationally, so that when our young people are trained, they are employable not only in Pakistan, but also internationally. Then secondly, we also think that a lot of, given the capacity shortage, that we actually need capacity for 500, at least 1 million to 1.5 million, but initially 500,000, when we have only capacity for about 350 to 400,000. We can't spend too much on brick and mortar. So one of the ways to do that is to establish smart classes, which are distance learning, using sort of 3D animation techniques, other skills where we can use various hubs in the vocational training centers to train people across other areas, in other schools, other facilities, so that everyone has to come to the vocational training centers. Initially, we are starting with 50. Hopefully, this will go up to 150, and this will, we hope, dramatically increase capacity. And this is something we are sort of pioneering. It has been done in a few other countries, and it has been reasonably successful. Then we are looking at one of the key things which I'll come back to, which is the national job portal, which is being adopted by the Prime Minister House itself. It will be called the Prime Minister's Employment Exchange, where we're making sure that those people who get trained will then get access to jobs, so that at least all government jobs, CPEC jobs, and provincial jobs are placed in this portal, and whoever gets trained has access or is readily can screen whatever jobs are available. As I had mentioned, it's incredibly important to have international accreditation, and what we're trying to do is to make sure that at least 50 institutes across the country, to start with, get some sort of international accreditation and linkage with institutes internationally. Then 5 is establishing country destination facilitation centers, because a lot of our skilled labor goes abroad, but there are different countries which has different particular needs. We have recently found out there's skilled labor required in Korea and Japan. There's been traditionally in Middle East. There's in Germany also, but the different countries have different, not only particular skills requirements, but also cultural needs. So we are trying to establish 5 separate centers for the different types of skills in different in different geographies. There's also, we are trying to see how we can incorporate madrasas, because part of the Ministry of Education's program is to include the madrasas, to bring them into the fold. And so we are trying to set up an institution there. Number 7 is, one of the very important things is the less developed areas don't tend to get access. So there's 50,000 youth across the country who will be trained in the less developed areas. These are the sort of interior Sindh, in South Punjab, in the FATA areas. And these are more traditional skills like carpentry, welding, plumbing, masonry, but that's something which is needed there, and also in agricultural areas. Finally, we're looking for the first time in Pakistan to do training for high-end, I don't want to be too grand about it, fourth generation industry 4.0 skills, but really I think one has to be realistic about this. I know many of you are from Silicon Valley, but we have to look at what Pakistan's needs are and what our input is in terms of students. So these are in some of the very exciting areas like coding and Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, but I think it's at the lowest tier of all of these different requirements. But we are fine. We were really driven by what the institutes themselves thought is in demand, and also what the youth themselves thought there is a lot of jobs available in. And we found that when there are 50,000 going to be trained across this, the initial tranche is for about 20,000. For that 20,000, we had applications for 250,000 across the country. And many of these were MSc in computing, in engineering, BSc, so very high tech, highly qualified young people were applying for this skills training, because the reason they gave was they felt it very relevant to getting jobs in these areas. One of the key areas we're trying to do is, there are lots of people who get trained under the Ustad Shagird model, and they don't have certificates. While they have a lot of the skills, they don't have the certificates. So we are trying to basically ensure that these young people get certification, because that enables them to go up the ladder to get further skills. And so what we are trying to do is, this is RPL, recognition of prior learning. Before that, I missed out one thing, which is apprenticeship program, which is again for the first time, the federal government in the capital territories has instituted a law, which is basically that every company which has, for every 50%, a company must have at least one intern, and who is provided accredited training. We were surprised, but there's a lot of demand for it. We opened up initially the advertisement, and we have had 2,000 companies in Federal Capital Territory as well as Gilgit-Baltistan applying for 2,000 companies, and we've got 5,000 jobs, 5,000 apprenticeship openings there. And this ranges from hospitality to people working in IT sector, to working in the banking. So there was a lot of interest in this. Number 11 is setting up an National Accreditation Council. What is incredibly important is to ensure that there is standards maintained in the institutes. We wanted to have every institute in the next 5 years to be accredited by a national body. And we set 5 levels, A to E, in terms of their standards. And this national is taking help from UK NARIC, which is an accrediting body in UK, to see what the accreditation criteria should be, and how best to make sure that these institutes can get up to that standard. We already have managed to accredit about 200, and of these 200, only about 10 are of standard A. And hopefully these 10 will be the first to also get internationally accredited. So as I said, there are 2,000, but we'll try and do everything. Then there's also, there's the training of trainers. One of the key problems, if we are to actually bring it up to sort of the capacity of 1.2, 1.5 million, we simply don't have enough trainers in the country. Currently, there are about 38,000 trainers. These trainers are not all of them are of sufficient standards. So we need to be retraining many of them. But initially, we are trying to do a chunk of 2,500, and these trainers will become trainers of other trainers. Now, one of the other areas we are trying to do, and this is one of the areas we have struggled in, because it requires a lot of understanding. It needs those particular skills, which is in terms of entrepreneurship. In some of the 50 of the institutes, vocational we're trying to set up incubation centers where we're basically trying to help the youth from who get the training to set up their own small companies, practices, shops, so that rather than necessarily looking for paid employment, they can self-generate employment or be self-employed and set up small companies. If 3 or 4 of the people are trading together, if they could set up a small, say, computing shop or a small welding shop, or so that's something which we are trying to encourage. There's a lot of focus of this by the Prime Minister himself, but it's something which I'll come back to. So that's really, broadly speaking, the Prime Minister's Hunarmand program. It has, as I said, 14 components. Its total sort of spending over the next 12 months will be approximately 10 billion rupees, which is not much. It's about $60 million. In that, as I said, in broadly speaking, we'll train about 150,000 youth, set up 50 smart classes, develops and standardize 200 TVET qualifications, provide a high-end technical training to youth, set up the Accreditation Council. So with $60 million, we have to stretch it a long way, but we have already achieved about 20 to 25% of our goals in this. And I like to think we are moving well. There are various photographs. I think Ahmad and the host can send you the presentation later. You can see yourself. We have huge participation from the youth, and there's a lot of interest in it. So that's really, broadly speaking, what's happening. It's been quite a struggle in trying to do it. There's, I know some of you are very keen to help Pakistan, and some of you have been, I'm told, wanting to come and directly contribute. I don't want to say that. I'll discourage most of you from doing so, because it's not easy. Let's put it this way. Working in the government has a lot of challenges. But having said that, I worked in Hunar Foundation, which was a non-profit NGO. The maximum, even today, they are doing is about 5,500. Here, the scale we are talking about initially, we are starting with 350,000 and hope per year to go up to 500,000 and then 1 million. If one has to make transformative change, it has to be done through the government. It's almost impossible in a country like Pakistan to do it without the government's involvement.
Javed, there's a lot of questions that are streaming in. So if you can take a pause and look through
I'm happy to do that. Sorry, I've been going on, and
yeah.
I'm pleased to take a pause.
No, that was very useful, the 14 points, and I think some of the questions are coming around the technology element of it. There's a standard question: what happens if the government changes? Any risk this program might dissolve in 2023? I guess these are fixed term programs. So do you want to address that question?
Yeah, I think for full disclosure's sake, and as Ahmad knows, I'm a PTI man, but I have to give credit to the previous government. A lot of these programs that were developed were not thought about for the first time. They were already being considered. There was a TVET policy which was developed by the previous executive director, Zulfikar Chima Sahab, and the previous government. That we built on that previous TVET reform program to come up with the Hunarmand Pakistan program. So I can't say that this was thought about for the first time, except I think in the previous government, it was worked upon, the plans were being made, but they had not come around to actually implementing it. So I think it was very much a priority of the previous government, and as it is of this government. So I'd like to think, even if in 2023 there is a change of government, I personally hope there isn't, but these things you can never predict. I'd like to think this is a high priority area for any government that comes into power. It's definitely a high priority area for most of the multilateral donor agencies, the multilateral advisors, this is one that gets a lot of support. And most importantly, it's the need of the hour in that one Pakistan has had a continuous decline in productivity. I don't have those numbers. I wrote an article recently, but Pakistan's productivity has grown at virtually a snail's pace compared to India, Bangladesh, and we don't even want to compare with China. So, and one of the reasons, quite apart from the high birth rate, is also the low technical skills training that takes place. There are three elements. There's a high birth rate, which obviously has an impact. There's the low technical skills training. And thirdly, the low participation of women in the workforce. So if we want to improve productivity, which is the key to improving the economic environment, and I dare say social environment, we will need to skill the youth, as well as ensure that women are part of that skilling and participation in the workforce. And hopefully, as they get wealthier and as education improves and training improves, the birth rate also comes to some nominal sort of equilibrium, which is sustainable.
I've just shared. I'm just going to share the link of Javed Hassan's page on Arab News. I think where a lot of these articles are based, so you can read about these articles on productivity and other points regarding.
I really request you to look on the productivity, because this is a really disturbing fact in Pakistan, that we have basically our productivity is not grown, and as I said, there are several reasons for it, but one of the key reasons is we don't focus on skills training. And I've come back to my earlier experience as a banker, but I was going to China, and it's worth emphasizing. One of the main reasons about China is they have very good engineers and scientists, but really their great strength is in the high number of technicians that they have. So for every engineer, there are as many as 100 to 200 technicians of extremely high quality. Moreover, most of the engineers go through the technical hands-on training aspect before they qualify as engineers. And even in their medical field, if some of you know, they have these barefoot doctors. So they have a very healthy and strong tradition of actually hands-on work.
We have a next question from Irfan Khan. Has anyone or anything materialized? What has happened on this program since its launch? You can quickly do a rundown of what has been achieved.
Okay, yeah. As I said, it's almost 20 to 25%, depending on the different components, has been achieved. Of the 50,000 less developed area skills training, as well as the 50,000 high-end youth. In both of these, we have launched about 15% in each. So there's about 37,000 youth being trained, equal amounts in both the less developed area and the high-end technical, and that's taking place. It started in February, but it had to come to a hiatus because of COVID. It started again just recently. The first batch will come out in February, and we like to think, I don't know if you can show some of the slides about the components of those high-end training that is taking place. Ahmad, you might see that. And that is already well underway. We will be able to see what the results are. What we are trying to achieve in this sort of initial 37,000 tranches to ensure that there's at least 80% employability. We will try and focus on areas more where there's greater employability and less on where the kids don't get employed.
We will go into a deep dive in some of the areas like skills development training for youth for high-end technologies, because I think that's of interest. We will cover that later on slightly, because a few questions are in that area.
Yeah, let me just go one more. On the standardization and TVET qualifications, we have already developed about 50 of those, and they're already being rolled out. Another 50 from another program is also, so already 100 are developed. We want to develop, as I said, in this we have 200, but altogether we want to develop 500 in the next year. The establishment of the smart classes, we have everything ready, the specification, the curriculums, but what we were waiting for some funding requirement. There was some, even though it's allocated, there was funding release issues. That is being done, and we hope to be tendering for that in the next few months. In terms of...
We'll go into some of these other points in the later questions,
Broadly speaking, in all of these, we have achieved about 20 to 25%.
25%. Okay, great. So it's an interesting question from Subhan Jalil. Skills development does not require international accreditation. If skills are taught properly, your output or resources will be able to sell themselves. And they've also asked a later question, not sure how skills will translate to more jobs. How are you measuring outcomes? I have a certain view on it, but Javed bhai, if you can answer that question, how do better quality skills lead to better jobs?
I mean, we have a very simple philosophy in this. We do not want to train for the sake of training. We are not training philosophers, and we are not. I'm very actually brutal in what I say, and sometimes it doesn't sound nice. I'm not even too fussed about whether I'm producing good people or nice people. What I want to make sure is that they are employable young people, and the training should be such that at least 80% of those who undertake these training get employment or are self-employed. And one of the ways we are trying to do is every institute is being asked to give it's not a hard undertaking, but it's an undertaking that you'll try and ensure that you have placement centers and you ensure that at least 80% of those who you train get employed. If you don't achieve that, in the next batch, you'll get less allocation. And the other way we are judging how much employment will achieve is really how much demand there is from the youth, because just like in anything, the higher the demand from the youth for a particular skill training, it's a pretty rough estimate, but there's a good chance that there's a lot of jobs available. That's why the youth are as savvy as any one of us, and they know where the jobs are. They're like, so we are trying to follow that demand rather than just, and finally, obviously, we're talking to industry, but it's not, industry sometimes can be quite slow and they don't really know what themselves exactly what they want. But we definitely are discussing with industry what is required.
Great. There's a question that has come up from Mohammed Mustajab. Is there anything in this program for computer science IT students having interest in AI, ML, cloud computing, web, and mobile app? Can anyone answer me? So I'll use this to go into point number 8. But you can start into it and I can then go into the point. Please go ahead. This is to do with the high-tech training.
Yeah, please, if you can go previous slides, I think it's there. If you go to previous slides, I'll tell you which slides it is. It is now working. See.
No.
Yeah. So if you can go to slide. Sorry, it is further down. Digital marketing. So the kind of trades we are doing is digital marketing, Internet of Things, food technology, soil and water fertilizer testing labs. So yes, very much so. We are working on many of these so-called Industry 4.0 skills. But what I like to say that these are not really what would be probably taught in some of the hothouses in New York. These are not as complex. These would be at the lower end of what is being taught in the West. But there are things like data crunchers and salespeople, freelancer people, which we are trying to train. We think there is a whole value chain, and we don't necessarily need to be at the high end of the value chain. But what we can be is, if they are literate and they're bright and they have some mathematical inclination, if they have basic computing science understanding, they can get onto the ladder get some basic certification, and then once they get onto the ladder, they can keep improving dramatically. So yes, there's 164 high-tech institutes. There's 156 trades in it. There are all manner of computing and coding and apps development types of training. The specific name, since I'm not from that background, don't know, but I do know that this was the area that there was the highest demand for, and in the next tranche we will be even training more. What we are very keen to do is to make sure that we can get certification. We have some certification, but these are not the highly recognized certification. We are talking to Coursera as well. But if any of you know, if we can get certification, that will help in their employability.
So you can see quite a lot of work has been done in terms of both gender. There is a gender presence, almost 20%. In most cases, the skills are imparted to young women and girls. So that's that. It's all across Pakistan. It's in Balochistan as well as Fata and KP. So it's across the board. And up to now, 16,810 students have started their training. So there is momentum behind it. Can you explain, Javed, how does it work, the training? And if someone in this audience has a coding program, how could they plug into NAVTTC's, in the Hunarmand Pakistan program, and help scale the impact of it?
Well, if you send out what the curriculum is, what the demand is, we could put you in touch with institute locally, and see if the local institute can provide that training. And because you being there, those who are in Silicon would know exactly what the demand is, and we can put out a memorandum, or the next tender we can put out that there is allocate 500 or 400 or whatever the need is students to be trained for that particular skill. So really it's done quite easily. All you need to do is contact us, tell us exactly, but it can't be very extensive. It's more the sort of 3 to 6 months training. Also the cost, you have to keep in mind, per student is about $500, which again, you might think of maximum of about $600 to $700 for each course. So it can't be much more than that in our case.
So actually, Javed Saab admitted to something which is quite radical, which is that you can even add new trades. If you have a solid program, somebody mentioned an AWS related course, Ijaz, his name was a gentleman, that course stands up to scrutiny, can be added to the curriculum, and a number could be allocated, which is then run through a local program. So I think that shows a lot of flexibility, and that has to be the case because it has to be market aligned.
Can I just say, I request all of you to reach out to us. Many of you are in America and in these areas. You would know best what is really happening. Just keep in mind that while a lot of the grunt work can be done initially by our youth, they might not be as high end as you get in California. But then again, the cost will be hugely different. So I think Pakistan is one of the largest freelancing centers in the world. But the cost per day or revenue per day is much lower. But I have no problem in that. They're getting onto the ladder, and that's how in different industries Bangladesh has grown its exports, by actually starting at the low end and then gradually moving up the high end.
Great. And one question which we also feel the same way, and I complain a lot, is the lack of quality in training. And the point that Waqar Beg mentions is quality is a big issue. We know that. We try to get quantity versus quality. I have feedback from a lot of students in different programs about NAVTTC programs that universities, institutions are putting their bachelor students, not faculty members, to teach under NAVTTC short courses as Hunarmand program. How are you working on quality outcome of the program, as it could be just putting money and efforts and no real outcome? If bachelor students are teaching Hunarmand program, and what are the quality checks and controls?
Okay, this is quite a large scheme. We are working with very high, in the high end, we are working with institutes like IBA and NED and UET, as well as some other institutes. We like to think that we have tried to make sure that the teachers who are training this are all of high quality. We are not as concerned whether they are bachelors or PhDs, because really in the kind of skills training that we are providing, what we need is people who can train relatively basic skills or even in which are, but have the training ability and have a good understanding of whatever skills they are training. So we are not, this is not sort of high level theoretical stuff that is being taught. It's more practical and have an industry understanding. So each trade we went and measured what the standard of teachers were, who the teachers were, and what the training facilities were, whether there was computing facility or lathe machine or whatever the training was, to make sure we did not allow places where they're just using their own daughters and sons to teach for the sake of it. So I'd like to think we have tried to ensure a certain degree of quality. The courses had to be vetted by NAVTTC. We went through the curriculum, the training material. So there is a sort of relatively, I think, quite a robust process. And in the end, the measurement of how good it is, it will be through the employability of these young people.
Okay, great. But I think it's an important point that the teacher training and the quality of teachers is very important, because as we know, the better quality the teacher, the better quality the students. I have again shared the address of the chairman of NAVTTC, Mr. Javed Hassan. So if you want to get in touch with him, and already I think some people have already dropped you an email, Javed bhai. So you have quite a few emails to respond to. So a question has come, what is your funding situation? You mentioned it's a 10 billion rupee program. By the way, 10 billion rupees is actually not a lot in the government sense of things. The volume of money can be much, much bigger. There was earlier program in Sindh called BBSYPT, where 18 billion rupees was spent, apparently training 238,000 students, whereas they can't even locate more than 30,000 of them afterwards. So it's not only just the quantum of the money, but also the controls and the checks of it. But I think with the institution, with the process of accrediting, TVET institutes, it's going to be a better outcome this time. But how is your funding situation? How long will it last, Javed?
As I said, 10 billion, we have spent already about 1.5 billion. There's another 1 billion being allocated. On a quarterly basis, the money gets released. There was a bit of a hiccup again, as I said. Government working in the government has its challenges. In the latest this year's budget, for some reason, I was away for personal reasons, and the minister was away also for his own personal reasons. But we thought it would be automatically included because it's a Prime Minister's approved program, and we found out that it was not included in the budget. And that created its own hurdles. It required the intervention of the Prime Minister. So finally, we are getting the money allocated, and that's why we have restarted the courses and we're going ahead with the program. I am very confident that this 10 billion, all of the money, so long as we can spend it effectively, we should get it. And later on, so long as we can show results, we should get more funding. Usman Dar, who's the youth special advisor, and the Prime Minister himself in the launch of the program had said this would be a 30 billion rupee program. But I am quite happy to work with less initially, rather than be too concerned about quantum of funds. Let's make sure what we are spending is spent effectively and we show results. And that's when you said 18 billion where you can't even locate some of the students, that's the last thing I would want as a legacy. Really, I'd much rather spend nothing than have a case where people are saying, what was the money spent on? So every dollar or every rupee that is spent has to be accounted for. We have our own checks and balances. We have a fortnightly review with the minister. This slide, which I hope the host will send to all of you, you can see we have our own internal guidelines about how we are measuring meeting targets, and every rupee hopefully well, not hopefully, has to be accounted for.
Very interesting point, and I think it's a point that we're very close to the Prime Minister. Are we taking advantage of the job opportunities in Japan, which is a lot of them? They need 500,000 over 3 to 4 years. We are missing one of the biggest chunk. This is Mr. Vakar Beg. Just to remind, we are missing one of the biggest chunk of jobs in Japan, as we are offered work visas last year. Not a single person was sent, and other countries are filling quota of Pakistan. I called Japan embassy and they say government of Pakistan must take the initiative. We are open to it. So
see, I tell you what, in this, what NAVTTC and Ministry of Education, we were given the internship part of this. There are two parts. One is the skilled labor, and then there's the internship with various companies. The internship, it really is driven by the company itself. It requires a presence in Japan. What we have decided, we have not really taken advantage, quite rightly so, and we have been criticized for it. But what we have decided is that we'll allow the private sector itself to find these internship roles, get the demand from Japan, and take the students or youth from here, so long as they get the certification accredited by us. So we don't want, the kind of things that have happened in the Middle East, where the poor quality people have gone and disappointed having arrived. So we want the standards to be maintained, but we will allow the private sector to really go with this.
Excellent. I think we've sort of gone over time. I just want to get some guidance from admin if he wants us to wrap it up, or should I continue with some of the other areas? So we can give some guidance. Another interesting point, I'd strongly recommend to use the likes of AWS and Oracle to benchmark teaching and learning. That would develop credibility of our talent and open many doors around the world. May I ask anyone in the audience if you would like to ask any question? Instead of me talking about it from the chat, you're more than welcome to ask question, and we can try to get the answer as possible. So if anyone has a question.
I think you have to raise hands if people want to ask questions.
Yeah, or maybe unmute. Let me see. I can unmute people if you're not. Okay, so I'm not getting any resonance back from the audience, but if anyone from PakLaunch, yes, please.
So Malik bhai, this is Ali. Just a quick question.
Hello?
So if you want to contact, regarding this program, or want to spread the message, like who do we contact? Like just drop a line to Javed Hassan Saab, or?
You drop a line to me or Ahmad, and I'll put you in contact with my executive director or the relevant staff, and we'd be happy to help you in whatever way. We really, as public officials, you'll find us to be very accessible.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you so much, Javed sir, for your presentation. So I'm not into such kind of things, so I will just speak simply that I was trying to increase our workforce in Japan visas, as I put up the questions. And even New Tech, as you told, that the university which is developing, and they started to take the students for Japanese, and they backed out last month. So no one is going to, yet training the workforce for the Japan. But yes, there are issues, and I just want to ask that how things can be streamlined for the job, especially because, okay, you are training, students are getting trained and your programs are going well with the time. But what about the job situation? Because there are many countries who need technical workforce now. We have streamlined the the process as well. I tried to contact TEVTA, but they are not.
We have a job portal. We have a very good job portal where all the graduates from TEFTAs and our youth program will come onto that job portal. So whoever is interested in whatever, and it very clearly lists the kind of skills requirements that the youth who have been certified, what they have. They have something like 5,000 different categories of skills. So they are very and relatively easy to find search. So whatever skills, the levels, all of that is there. Also, if you can send us what your job requirements are, or what your kind of skills requirements are in terms of people, we can help you do the screening for the youth or people, and send you a list of people you might want to place. With regards to Japan, we can also help you out in that. We are going to open it up to everyone in the private sector. But if you already have ready demand, we have been looking at it, and I'm disappointed you didn't come to us, because this is something, we have a problem that we can't set up office in Japan ourselves, but we do have the inventory of, so to speak, youth or skilled labor whom we can provide. And if necessary, we'll give them the Japanese training, language training and cultural training to go there.
Yeah, yes, the point is, okay, I have the people who can help me in that. Actually, I have a lot of people who can work in that places, but the problem is that the initiation should be by the government. Like South Korean government used to give us, money to train our students, like 3 or 4 years before. They have stopped it for technical type. I can send you the details of the programs as well. They were technology programs. They used to train our people there with degrees as well, and they have stopped it. So there is a need that government, at the government level, like the institutions you are running, this should take the initiative to talk with institutions in Japan, or institutions in Germany specifically, or in South Korea, which have stopped our quota for the technical workforce, because many countries are working on it. I see Swiss people, they are much focusing more than the degrees on this technical workforce development.
Okay, let's take this offline, and you're welcome to. We can discuss this on phone. Again, Ahmad, I'm quite happy for my phone to be shared, but I think for the convenience of other audience members, let's discuss this separately.
Ji Vakar Beg, I've shared Mr. Javed Hassan's email address in the group chat twice. If you go up and down, you'll have it, and more than welcome to contact him in this respect. Anyone else talk about, have any question? Once you have a question, Javed bhai, can you think of a question? Can you talk about the smart labs? Because this is one area where, the diaspora can really help. Some of the more older machinery by Western standards, but still quite advanced for us, can be used in setting up these smart labs. There's a lot of that happens. Medical switches, वगैरह जो आपके stents होते हैं वो आते हैं इस तरह से. So what are these and how they set up, and what's the governance mechanism around them?
These smart labs are being set up under our guidance, our specifications. The details of the specifications I can share, but they are not set up in our institutes other than in NTB, which is in Islamabad, but they're being set up in the provinces. There's about 10 of those in Punjab initially, and then 5 in Sindh, similar amount in, and then we'll sort of unroll all of the 50 of them. So they have 3D animation, they have, what do you call it, very visual abilities. They have also simulators. I think the specifics, if you have something similar, we'd be happy to use it to complement what is already existing there. Some of this is in terms of the software program. There are heavy machinery that can be trained about this. So what we'll need to do is, those who are interested, we'll need to share what our specs are and see what you can do to supplement that, or considerably add to it.
And that's great, because I think that will be very helpful, and that's where diaspora can make a contribution. Are there any further questions from any of our friends who are listening in today? Mr. Namullah, I think.
Yeah, so Assalamu alaikum. So I had just a simple question. I was listening through, and I guess you guys mentioned that the outreach of this whole program is currently like 400,000 students.
This one altogether is about 200,000 students.
Okay, so there is a gap like
per year from the capacity in the system is about 400,000 annually.
Yeah, and I think you earlier mentioned that our total youth coming out every year is like 1.3 million or something.
No. The youth who are coming into the market is about 1.8. Of those, only about 400,000 get any form of training in vocational skills. About 700,000 go into universities and professional institutes.
Okay, so do we have a projection that this program, how will it go to like 1.3 or whatever the gap is? Like, because initially you said that probably you guys are not will not recommend any private entity to come in or some non-profit entity to come in and do it themselves. The government should be like doing it, like, most probably. So
no, let me correct you. The private sector is most welcome. We want private sector to be involved in it. There's already private sector institutions that someone like Ahmad and myself were heading, Aman Tech, for instance, or Hunar Foundation. If you're interested, you're most happy to contribute in that and help that, because we want the private sector to exist. They also help set standards. Very often they're more innovative. So no, there's absolutely no bar in any way for the private sector from contributing. We want to see the private sector and industry aligning themselves in the work skills development area.
Absolutely. I think, let me add, a lot of the work is being done through private sector institutes, where NAVTTC is setting the quality standards and some of the testing and provide them with the funding. So it's done through the public sector, TVET institutes, as well as the private sector. So if you have a program or an institute or a program that you wish to partner with, you can register with under this program in the next scheme, and you can be eligible to getting funding through that.
Okay, thank you for that. So one more thing. So for example, if someone wants to run such kind of institute, do we have any projections or any data on, for example, so what is the government strategy for future industry of Pakistan, how we project our workforce number that we might need in the industry for today's needs and probably the next 10 years need? And then, because what I heard was that we are saying that the demand is from youth. So forgive me if I am wrong, but shouldn't the demand come from our own studies and research, that how we want to, as a government, as a national institutions, want to transform the industry? What kind of workforce do we want, seeing the future needs of like the global future needs? And then we should see how much we need, and then how much.
I actually disagree with that. I think governments are very bad at predicting things. Governments are best in enabling the private sector to arrive at what they need. The youth very often have a much better idea about where the future is going. I, as a government organization, in no way can really determine what industry will be in 5 years' time. I may have illusions of getting there, but inevitably governments get it wrong. And that's where a lot of Pakistanis have this view of somehow thinking the government can do a wonderful job in many things. In fact, the government does a dreadful job. And after the experience of Pakistan for 70 years, I'm surprised that so many people think we can still, as government, do a lot of good things. What we can do is facilitate the private sector, the youth, to arrive there. And our role should be that of facilitation and enabling, rather than deciding how the future will be.
So I have a certain view on this, and I think if you're a government of Singapore or South Korea or Japan, and they're very efficient and they're like run like corporates of Dubai, you can certainly do those things, and they do that. They do that 15-year blank canvas. What is the industry going to look like? What are the industries we need to develop? And hence the skills needs that we have. They do that. I think our government has not the import, doesn't do it. And at this stage, doesn't have the capability. Not that we don't need it. I think there would be certain either a think tank or an institute that should do, at least at the provincial level, the skills demand. I can tell you, and Javed bhai can tell you, because we've been on a former running vocational training institutes. The industry is quite myopic about it. If you go to industry and you say, give me a demand for the next 3 years, about what your skills needs are, they say, what are you talking about? We cannot budget more than 9 months. So in the industry in Pakistan, literally is operating on 12-month budget and nothing beyond that. So how do you do long-term planning? It's a big issue. Absolutely. Mr. Ramallah, this doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in the private sector. It's for sure it's not happening in the public sector, but definitely if it is to happen, it's more likely to work if it works at the industry level, the skills level, the textile association or the auto association. If they do it, I think that would be much more relevant and much more useful.
I think I exaggerate. I think the government should be setting standards, should be setting certification levels, should be ensuring certain standardization, should be ensuring that we are up to mark internationally. But the particular skills, industry and those who are seeking jobs, they are probably the best judge of it. And what we should do is, while we should have our own, we do have a National Skills Information Survey, which we conduct every year. We want to find out, we talk to industry, we talk to companies, we talk to banks to see what sort of skills they require. But as I said, it's in the end a bureaucracy trying to decide what industry will be in few years' time. I think industry and there are so many variables when you're looking at a economy that often you can't really predict well. What you can do is on a short-term basis respond to what is there.
Yeah. Any further questions?
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time and listening to myself and Ahmad. We really appreciate your interest in this, and please feel free to call me whenever you want to.
And with that, I was just parting thought, which is recently there was an interaction between the Army Chief and some technologists. One of the technologists who came was Zia Chishti. Most of you would know him. And I think it's closed door discussion, but it came out. And basically what he's saying is that Pakistan, the talent is a supply side issue, which is you don't get the quality in the numbers that you need. You need, if you want to get 500 good developers, coders,